Hello, everyone. Welcome again to this business partnerships
One, two.
theater sponsored by Airbnb. We have a very interesting panel now. It's called Ancillary Revenue, Monetize Things You Hadn't Considered Before, moderated by Robert Nunez, co-host Expert Company, Scott Ellis, Sales Director at Young Parking Space, Alejandro Soria, founder and CEO of co-hosting, and Andres Varela, Strategic Alliances and Growth at Servant Trip. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'm Robert Nunez from the CoHost Expert Company. And as I'm up here with these three fine gentlemen, we're going to discuss ancillary revenue, additional monies that you may not be realizing that you're losing or not even making in your vacation portfolio or your short-term rental properties. So we're going to open up with the leading question. Excuse me. In comparison with the airlines, why haven't yet the hospitality industry penetrated the ancillary revenue model? And I'll start yourself.
Yeah, I've got a slightly sort of different angle on this one. I actually think, relating it back to our own experiences probably 3 or 4 years ago, when we were trying to scale our solution, Your Parking Space, there was quite a bit of resistance when approaching the hospitality industry, specifically for trying to monetize unused parking spaces. I actually think we're in a pretty good position, and I think that hotels, whether it be a large operator down to independent or individual owners, are actually now seeking ancillary ideas. So we're at a bit of a level playing field. Technologies, we're all aware they're out there. It's just looking for the best one that we can implement quickly, cheaply, that's going to have a pretty big impact within our business. So I actually think that a lot of ancillary revenue ideas are out there. There has been a bit of a shift in that mentality where I did see resistance 3 or 4 years ago as to where now, I think due to things like ever increasing operating costs, stretching targets, depending on the size of the organization, has forced people to go out there and consider monetizing things they hadn't previously seen before to introduce other income streams into their businesses.
Hello. Right, so based on co-hosting experience, I think we're comparing two different industries. On one side, we have the travel industry, which is airlines, and on the other side, we have a hospitality industry. We can easily see how airlines are just trying to increase their revenue by selling extra services, where hotels and Airbnb owners, they are trying to deliver a better service. So when we talk about extra services in the hospitality industry, we have to see it as improving the whole guest stay more than increasing the revenue. So that's why it took a while for hotels to start this business.
Hello, good morning. Andrea speaking from Servant Trip. I wouldn't have a clear answer for this question, but what I would like to share with you is how big is the opportunity on this ancillary side. If you're not familiar with some numbers, just for you to know, on the airlines market, ancillary represented around almost $100 billion last year, according to some studies from companies like Cat Travel, which is very focused on ancillaries, regarding the experience from 176, I think, carriers. So when it is about ancillaries, the market opportunity is huge. Things like not only these extra services that can be founded on an airline company, but any kind of service that can be delivered at destination. Focusrite says that this next year, 2020, that will represent around $200 billion. Talking about tourism activities, talking about mobility and ground services, talking about all the different kind of services, added services that can be provided to any customer that you, proprietors or people who is around accommodation, can control at the real experience, physically speaking with them. So from my experience and from our experience in Servant Trip is more about to provide all these different options that can be delivered by any rental or any accommodation hospitality business in or at destination, not only previously speaking, but once the customer is arrived to destination.
And to add to that, I like the word he used, control. The airlines are able to almost perfect the ancillary revenue because they control you from the minute you go through security and you have to throw your water away or you can't bring in certain foods, till you're sitting and delayed for an hour and you have to eat the concession food, to charging you on the flight, you know, to your baggage, to the parking. So they have control of your entire experience on that part. But if you flip the script a little bit, you think about it, as the host and property managers, we too have control to a degree from the moment they book, they walk through our door, and they check out. The other side of that is that we're very cautious or fearful in a way to charge a guest for something because we believe that, well, if they're already paying for the stay, they're going to think that paying for these extra amenities or these extra little perks is, you know, is going to give us a bad review or they're going to turn them off. But the truth of the matter is that you have to test the waters. Every property manager and person here has a different type of property. You may have something within your portfolio that you have a value that somebody would pay for. You have to figure out how to structure it and request payment or make it available handsomely and then request payment for it and test it out and see what works. If some people don't want to pay for it, they won't. If some things start working, then they will. But you'll never know if all you're thinking is, well, they already paid me for the house or the property, why would they want to pay me for something additional? So you as property managers and hosts should really put your thinking hat on and say, or get together with your team and say, how can we get something extra out of what we already have? And that might help you out.
Go ahead. Hello. So I don't think it's about charging extra money. It's about personalizing the stay of your guests. Let's say you have an ADR of 100 euros or 100 pounds a night. If you want to include that water, if you want to include that park space, you might be going up to 150 pounds, leaving people out of your business. So it's about setting your rack rate of 100 euros and then just personalizing the rest of the stay, extra charging whatever the guest needs. It's not about, you know, you're not selling, you're personalizing the stay of your guests.
Ready for one of the next?
Yeah, no, I think on that, I'd probably side more with Robert's suggestion there that if you never try, you'll never know. Whether it be small costs, but lots of little additional ideas, just to add to the stay or the experience. I think actually when people prepay in advance for something, and they've parted with that revenue, that cash already, I think actually when they're in the holiday mood, the holiday vibe on arrival, I think they're actually still willing to maybe spend again or spend more money. So that whole pre-booking element, I think actually if we flip it around, the more you can get people to prepay before arrival, package it all up, parking, the room rate, additional features, things, I don't know, champagnes, chocolates, whatever you want to add in there to add to the experience. I think that does free them up in their mind mentally to spend again actually when they are there during the stay.
And one more thing. If you have some products or services that you can offer, it's still up to the guest to decide if they want to pay for it or not. It's not up to you. You're making it available. It's up to them to decide if they want to, participate in that next product or service. Not to make it uncomfortable and take away the basic necessities that they need or that they expect, but if there are some things that you might consider to be an additional perk or amenity, make it available and then let them decide if they want to or they don't. And the reviews or the conversations will let you know if you're on target or if it's fair or whatever the case is. We can't just assume that they won't or they're not interested in it. You have to give it a shot. Then the next point is, we know that through the short-term rental business industry, one of the participants being Airbnb and so forth, with 7 million listings worldwide, 500 million guest arrivals since 2011, and I think at almost 100,000 cities. That is a lot of bodies coming in and out of doors. Like, that's a lot of people that are checking in and checking out. And for it to be such a large number of occupants and guests over such a large stretch of time, it would be a little short-sighted to think that whether through guest experience or whether through trial and error, that we don't actually attempt to figure out additional models to each different market because everybody's different. What is your thought on this?
Yeah, I think this is quite an important topic. For me, this all centers around data, which obviously is a hot topic across the board, regardless of what sector you're involved in at the moment. For me, it's two angles, really, in terms of the data. And I don't want it to sound too complicated or complex, because I completely appreciate that some of you could be independent, small private operator, one business, one home, for example. But on the front end, essentially, I think we can start to capture more information at the point of booking to better understand who's going to be arriving. We can then start to tailor the service we offer when they actually arrive on the day of their stay. And now that can go a bit further, and that can be things such as, I mean, it's not my area of expertise, but you can start to tweak small things within the home, add in features that apply to the answers that you were given, the data that you've collected beforehand. Reversing that the other way around, I see so many businesses, I've worked with many of them, that have thousands and thousands of people, footfall traffic through their business on a daily basis. They leave and they capture nothing. So as long as it's done compliantly, I think, and again, it varies depending on the size of your business. But if we can try and capture a little bit more information, or even start to push ourselves to use that information, that data that we gather on the person that stays with us, to retarget them when there's a promotion on. I get that there's a lot of reliance on bookings through third parties. Well, actually, wouldn't it be pretty powerful if you could start to retarget people and generate your own bookings? And there'd be less reliance on that and giving that margin away. So data for me on both sides, whether it's at point of booking or after the guest has stayed with you, whether it's something as basic as questionnaires, Trustpilots, questionnaires, to use that to quality check their stay, gain a little piece of information from them so that you can reach back out and capture them again, I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah. From my angle, I could say that there are two main points to take in account. The first one is convenience is always about knowledge. Are most part of your customers or your clients, are they aware about which are the possibilities that you can offer them as an ancillary service? So how are you introducing those options, or how are you introducing these new services and possibilities that are going to generate new revenue for you? Revenue is important, and this is what the airlines do very well. As they know they have the ownership of the customer that is buying or booking something, and they can add and grab different options in order to extend, in order to, let's say, increase the average ticket value. And the second thing is which channel. So how am I going to be to deliver, or how can I access to the customers for make them to discover, to know that they can buy or they can book some of the things with me, whatever. And again, coming back to the airlines example, what they have done very well is working on partnerships. Today, if you want to provide more value to your customers, you have to be organizationally lean. You have to be very careful with which resources I'm going to deploy or I'm going to put in place in order to provide more value or more services. And to do so, who I'm going to partnership in order to deliver these new services or this new value. That's a perspective that we try to introduce in the market.
I see a bit different. It is nice having all this data here, but to be honest, for example, the mission of co-hosting is to empower hospitality professionals to be at the center of the guest journey. And the reason why is because 100 years ago, the hotel, the accommodation, had full control over the guest. There were no OTAs, there were no travel agents, so we had direct access to the guest. And even if we have all these data nowadays, it's still the same. If you go tomorrow to Bangkok, how are you going to find out your way to the apartment? Are you going to Google it, or are you going to ask your host? Most cases, people ended up asking their host, ended up asking the concierge. And this is why, at the end of the day, we have full control. It is nice having this data. It is nice tailor-making the final offer to your guest, but we have full control of it. That's why using technology without losing the human touch is the future within the ancillary extra services revenue.
Thank you. I'm going to ask each gentleman here, are there two sources of ancillary revenue? Because the topic here is, how do you find additional ancillary revenue within your property or your portfolio? So I'm going to ask the gentleman here if they have maybe one or two that they may know of, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I'm going to shamelessly plug ourselves on this one. So yeah, obviously my area of expertise is within parking. The car park, whether that be a fully fledged 100-space car park or breaking it right down to a driveway, one space attached to a home or a house somewhere. We originally began, our concept was allowing private individuals to rent out unused or underutilized parking. And I think this is really applicable to a lot of the people at the event today. It's where the experience begins, and it's typically where it ends. And it can be overlooked, the car park, to be honest, quite a bit. It's what I've found. It's a bit of an afterthought, but actually it can be an extremely profitable afterthought. As long as you've got a vehicle, a way, obviously, to try and monetize the asset. One of my frustrations, again, selfishly, has been we're experts at yielding the rooms, but we don't consider the whole asset. And the car park's attached. And if I was going to speak more generally, not just about parking, I think if we can, again, come from the perspective of looking at the building, the asset, the property, and looking at all areas of it and asking, is this bit being fully utilized all the time? So many times I'll turn up to a car park in a fantastic area and there'll be a skip occupying 3 of those parking spaces, or rubbish. Actually, what we need to do is constantly be looking at it as space, whether it be inside or outside, and trying to fully utilize it. So I think looking at utilization of space in general, in the same way we look to yield the rooms, can reap significant rewards. And again, there's various people that offer that service, as well as ourselves. And then they're here today, actually, another great business that I like, and a fantastic model. Really, really simple, easy to deploy and effective. So for example, Stasher do a great job, but is the storage element. It's just such a cool business. I'm a big fan, and we've got a mutual client, so I've crossed over with the guys quite a bit. But that operates on all sorts, all scales. That business. It's quite simply, you already store bags or allow people to store bags in the building, in the facility. So an extension on that is allowing non-guests, non-residents to do so, and that's what they do very well. And there's a small margin in it then for the owner or the landlord. So there's 2 examples for me that are pretty useful.
So at CoHosting, we build what we call intelligent cross-selling. So basically, we build a technology for holiday rental managers to connect to a bunch of suppliers, such as Thatchers, airport transfer companies, tour and activities, parkings. So based on our data, 76% of our bookings are made before the arrival day, and those are airport transfer. And on the other hand, the second most demanded service is tour and experiences, and those services are booked once they have arrived to the final location.
So that allows me to introduce, thank you very much for that, Alejandro, that allows me to introduce our nature, our area of expertise. 7Trip is a B2B platform that tried to gather, consolidate, offer basically in 2 main verticals, 2 main products, 2 main services, which are transfers and private drivers in one side, and on the other side, tours and activities. What we do basically is to gather all together, consolidate different providers in order to get them ready under one APA-only connection. So that means that we can partnership very easily, plug and play if you have technology to do so, to provide new offer in around 5,000 destinations in the world, 170 markets. And to give you an idea about what that could represent in terms of revenue, imagine that you get a 130 pounds or 130 euro ticket for some of those services, those 2 services together. That could represent between 8 to 18% commission for the partner which is distributing. Today we are distributing all these offers through GDSs like Amadeus and through a big travel agency network. So this is what we are trying to offer and introduce in the market.
I'm going to say that, as you were saying before, sorry, I lost my connection here. How many people refer a guest, when a guest makes a request for something that you don't offer at your property, do you refer them somewhere else, like parking, right? The food, baggage. Well, if you have several properties and there is a parking lot nearby, you may actually want to consider renting a long-term space at the lot and now offer parking within your portfolio. It's really that simple. You know, you may want to look at different, whatever you're referring your guests to do, that's a check or an income, a revenue that you're graciously, out of the kindness of your heart, giving away to somebody else. But if you actually stop and say, well, how could, as you were saying, which is great, how can I actually monetize from this experience? Maybe not to the point where you're adding so much extra work, but you still are referring them to someone else. On top of that, there's so many companies here in this great conference that you can actually align yourself with and have services that'll give you a URL link or a code, and you could add it to your listings, and they can take on some of the workload for you while giving, you know, you're earning something back in return. So every time that a guest asks you for something and you say, I'm sorry, we don't do that, I can't help you, or contact this person or follow this link, remember, that's actually some revenue that you could be giving away. So try to consider that as you grow your business, because the objective is not just to focus on the unit itself, is to focus, as you said, on the entire experience. And there is revenue and ancillary revenue throughout the whole experience from start to finish and hopefully to return. Okay? Thank you, everyone, and we appreciate you for joining us. No questions, right? If you do, you can step up here.